On Brontara, a locked door is not safety. It is a timer. Jace Mercer brought his family to Kessel Ward for one clean start, one quiet night, and one chance to keep his little brother and sister walking to school like they belong. But the city had its own rules, and rules here were never free. The street took a welcome fee, the clinic sold time, and every problem came with a price that felt impossible on purpose. Then a message appeared, calm and polite, like it was not a threat, and Jace realized this was not about winning fights. It was about who gets to control your life when you have nothing left to trade. All Jace Mercer wanted was one clean start on Brontara, one door that locked, and one night where his mother could sleep without flinching. He had a single stack of credits in his pocket, thin as paper, and he had 4 people looking at him like he was the floor under their feet. Cinderbox tenements sat in Kessel Ward like a rusted shipping crate someone forgot to move. The hallway smelled like frying oil and old coolant, and pipes sweated in the walls. The paint bubbled where heat had lived too long, and somewhere above, a heavy-bodied neighbor dragged furniture across the floor, the sound slow and mean. Jace kept his eyes forward and his voice low. We get the deposit in, we stay quiet, we keep our heads down. Mira Mercer nodded too fast. Evan Mercer nodded too slow, one hand pressed to his side like he was holding something in place. Lena and Noah carried their school bags like they were priceless, and they walked close as if space itself was risky here. At the stairwell, a tenant with scaled skin and shoulders wider than the doorway leaned close to another and whispered without caring who heard. Bullpack checks the new ones. They always do. Jace felt the words land like a weight, because Bullpack Crew was the local street pack that ran Kessel Ward with smiles and fists. He had heard the name on the transport, when a tired worker warned him with a casual tone that sounded learned the hard way. The landlord waited inside Unit 12, a pale alien with a clipped voice and a metal tablet held flat against his chest. He did not offer a hand, and he did not offer a welcome. You were late, the landlord said. We came as fast as we could, Jace said. We just need the room, Jace added. The landlord glanced past him at Evan and Mira, and his eyes paused on the children, not with pity, but with math. Deposit is doubled for off-worlders, the landlord said, and his tone stayed flat. Kessel Ward policy. Jace swallowed. That was not in the listing. The landlord shrugged. Then you can sleep outside. I rent to people who can pay tonight, he finished. Noah tightened his grip on his bag. Lena lifted her chin like a shield. Mira reached into her coat, fingers shaking as she counted, and Jay saw a small bottle in her pocket with a pharmacy label. Evan saw it too and turned his body to hide it, moving like hiding the bottle could hide the truth. Jace laid the credits on the landlord's tablet, one by one, and his stomach dropped with each tap. He did not leave enough for mistakes, and he did not leave enough for anything. When the landlord finally stepped aside, the unit was smaller than the transport bunk, with a thin bed and a sink that dripped. A window looked onto a brick wall, but it was still a door, still a lock, still a start. Jay set the bags down and forced a breath. We are in. We can work from here. Mira brushed Noah's hair back with a hand that trembled. We will be fine. Evan tried to smile. It did not reach his eyes. Jace turned toward the hallway and listened, because the building had its own pulse, footsteps, and distant laughter. A low thump echoed, something heavy being dropped, and he pictured Bullpack like a tax that walked on 2 legs. He could feel the first rule of this place in the air. Brontara did not care why you were here, only what you could take, and it cared what could be taken from you. The first knock came after dark, and it did not ask. It was the kind that announced itself, the kind that said the door already belonged to someone else. Jace held up a hand to keep his family still, then crossed the room and put his eye to the peephole. 3 figures stood in the hallway, filling the space like they were built for it. Rusk Dalek stood in front with a confident grin, and 2 behind him, Marnket and Vito Krell, watched the door like it was a joke. Jace opened the door just enough to block the view inside. Can I help you? Jace asked. Rusk smiled wider. You're the new Earth family. Mercer, right? Jace did not like that they knew the name. What do you want? Rusk leaned closer, and the hallway light made his skin look hard, like polished stone. Welcome fee. Rusk said, and his voice stayed easy. Protection fee. Call it whatever makes you sleep better, he added. We just pay the deposit, Jace said. We do not have more. Rusk's grin stayed in place, but it did not reach his eyes. Then you should not have moved to Kesselward. Behind Jace, he heard a soft shuffle as Mira stood up. Evan pushed himself off the bed too fast and had to catch the wall, and Jace felt anger flare before he forced it down. Look, Jace said, keeping his voice steady. We are here to work, and we are not looking for trouble. Rusk lifted his hands like he was offended. Trouble finds you when you do not pay your share. Marn stepped forward and nudged the door with a casual shoulder, trying to widen the gap. Jace tightened his grip on the edge, and Vito laughed quietly like this was entertainment and nothing else. Evan tried to speak, but the words came out thin. Please, we do not have anything left. The children have school, Evan added. Rusk's eyes slid past Jace and locked onto Noah, who stood behind Mira with his bag hugged to his chest. Lena moved in front of him without thinking, just reacting. Rusk nodded toward them. School costs money. Safety costs money, Rusk continued. Everything costs money here. Mira bowed her head. We could pay later. We will pay. Just not tonight, she finished. Rusk's smile hardened. No. He pushed forward fast, not a full shove, just enough to show power, and Evan stepped between him and the children on instinct. Rusk's forearm clipped Evan's chest. Evan stumbled, and the air left him in a wet gasp. Jace saw red, and Mira caught Evan before he fell. Please, Mira said. Do not. My husband is sick, she added. Jace felt the urge to swing and forced it down, remembering the warning from the transport and the cost of a first-week feud. So he tried one more time to buy peace with words. We do not want a feud, Jace said. Take what you need and go. Rusk tilted his head. That is better. You are learning, he said. Marn reached out and snatched Noah's bag strap, yanking it hard, and Noah stumbled forward in surprise. The bag slipped and a thin notebook fell to the floor, pages splaying open. Lena stepped in front of Noah again, shoulders set. Give it back, Lena said. Rusk laughed. Hear that? That kid has grit, he added. Jace's heart thumped once, heavy because this was no longer a fee. It was a warning. The hallway outside Cinderbox Tenements was narrow, with nowhere to hide, and Evan coughed again, sharp enough to make Mira flinch. Jace heard it and made his decision, because he did not need space, he needed timing. He stepped out and closed the door behind him, placing himself between Bullpack and his family. He kept his voice low so the children would not hear fear in it. Put the bag down. Rusk spread his hands. Or what? Jace answered with movement, shifting his weight, quick and controlled, and striking Marn's wrist first. The grab broke, the strap slipped free, and before Marn could react, Jace stepped inside his reach. He drove a short hit into Marn's chest, not to crush, just to shock the breath out. Vito lunged, thinking size would solve it, and Jace turned his shoulder, let the momentum pass, then hooked Vito's arm and twisted. Vito hit the wall with a grunt and slid down, eyes wide, more surprised than hurt. Rusk's grin vanished, and his hand went to Jace's collar. Jace caught it, rolled his wrist, and pushed, and Rusk's balance broke for half a second. Half a second was enough. Jace swept Rusk's leg and sent him down, the impact ringing through the hallway. Somewhere above, a neighbor shouted something in a language Jace did not know, and a door opened and shut fast, like curiosity had limits. Rusk stayed down for a beat, staring up at Jace like he could not understand how a smaller body had moved him like that. Then Rusk lifted both hands, palms out. Okay. Jace did not chase, and he did not pose. He stood over them, breathing hard, and kept his tone flat. You do not touch my family. Marn held his chest, wheezing. Vito cradled his arm like it had been stolen from him. Rusk swallowed and nodded. We will not come back. You proved your point, he added, but his eyes were thinking. You will not even look at them, Jace said. Rusk nodded again, fast. Fine. We are done. Jace heard the door behind him crack open, and he felt Myra's presence like warmth at his back. He heard Lena's sharp breath, and he heard Noah whisper, small and shaking, Jace. Jace kept his eyes on Rusk. Go. Bullpack retreated down the hallway, slow at first, then faster when they reached the stairwell. Their footsteps faded, and the building breathed again, but it did not feel safe. Jace turned back to his door, and Evan stood inside, bracing himself on the wall, face pale. Mira stared at Jace like she was seeing two versions of her son at once, and the look made him feel older than he was. "You should not have," Mira said. "I know," Jace said, "but I could not let them put hands on the children." Evan tried to straighten. "We told you. We cannot afford enemies," Evan added, and his cough threatened the end of the sentence. Jace looked at the thin bed, the dripping sink, and the wall that blocked the window. He thought about the deposit he had paid and the credits he did not have, and he thought about the way Rusk had raised his hands, not in respect, but in calculation. "They will come back," Jace said quietly. "Not tonight, but they will," he finished, and certainty filled the room. Mira pulled Noah close. Lena kept her eyes on the door like she expected it to break again. Jace locked it, then leaned his forehead against the metal for a moment, letting the cold bite feel honest. On Brontara, a promise was just a pause, and a pause was all the poor ever got. Behind him, Evan coughed again, and Jace knew the first night was not the test. It was the warning. Jace Mercer did not want another fight. He wanted rent paid, medicine on the table, and his little brother and sister walking into Graybridge School Annex like they belonged there. Bullpack crew had backed off for one night, and that was all it was. A week later, his plan was simple: work until his hands shook, keep his family invisible, and pray the street forgot his name. The problem was the street never forgot. It just waited for a better moment. North Tram Yard was where the city woke up angry, and the first light hit the rails and turned them slick and cold like a kitchen knife. Jace moved with the crowd, head down, lunch packed in a paper wrap, boots still damp from the night before. He checked his pocket by habit, a handful of credits, not enough to breathe easy. His shift badge for Dockline was clipped to his jacket, and a kitchen tag sat behind it, greasy from too many nights. A dock worker with thick forearms leaned in as the tram doors closed. "You're the Earth guy, right?" Jace kept his eyes forward. "I am just a worker." The man snorted like that was cute. "Boltpack is looking. They are asking around for the one who dropped Rusk, Dalek, and Cinderbox," he added. Jace felt a flash of heat under his ribs. "I do not want trouble." "Then do not walk alone," the man said. "And do not let your brother and sister walk alone." Jace stepped off at Dockline and went straight into motion, stacking crates, tying straps, and shoving pallets until his shoulders burned. He did it fast because fast meant they called him back, and fast meant a few more credits. Fast meant Mira could pick up Evan's refill without begging. At noon he ate standing up, watching the clock like it was a predator, and the same question replayed in his mind. How do you protect a family when you have to leave them to work? That night, the kitchen job smelled like cheap oil and hot metal, and Jace washed pans until his fingers went numb. The cook barked orders, Jace nodded, and he kept his temper down while he kept thinking about Lena's homework and Noah's shoes already splitting. He told himself he could patch anything if he just kept moving. When he finally got back to Cinderbox Tenements, the hallway was louder than usual, doors slamming, someone laughing too hard, someone else cursing like they had been waiting all day to let it out. Mira opened their door the moment she heard his steps, and her face looked tired in a way she tried to hide from the children. "Evan is sleeping," she whispered. "He had that tight cough again." Jace nodded. "Did you get the refill?" Mira lifted a small paper bag, then glanced down the hallway like the walls had ears. "There was a woman outside earlier," Mira said. "She watched our door, then left. I did not recognize her," she added, and fear sat behind the words. Jace felt his pulse shift because they were not gone and they were learning the routine. He forced his voice to stay calm. "Keep the children inside after school. If anything feels wrong, you go to Ward 9 precinct," Jace said. "You understand?" Mira swallowed. "Will they listen?" Jace did not answer with hope. He answered with a plan. "They will have to," he said, and he wished the city agreed. Rain turned Kessel Ward into a long, dirty slide, water running in thin rivers down Riftwalk Alley, carrying trash and grease towards storm drains. It looked like the city was trying to wash itself clean, but it did not work. Jace's goal that night was small and urgent. Get home, check on Evan's breathing, and make sure the medicine stayed cold. No pride, no revenge, just survival. He rounded the corner and saw the shapes first, 3 bodies blocking the alley, shoulders filling the space. A 4th shadow near the stairwell stood half-hidden, and Sela Drain watched like a lookout. Rusk Dalek stepped forward, rain beating on his skin, and his grin was gone. What he wore now was not anger. It was confidence, like he had brought enough hands to make confidence cheap. You work a lot, Mercer, Rusk said. That makes you predictable. Jace set his bag down slow. Walk away. Rusk laughed once. You said that last time. Then you hurt my people, he added, as if that settled everything. Jace kept his stance steady, because if he fought here, the noise would pull neighbors and Bolt Pack would pick new victims out of the crowd. He needed them to leave without turning the building into a hunting ground. I do not want a feud, Jace said. I want my family left alone. Rusk tilted his head. Then pay. Before Jace could answer, Marn Kett moved, throwing the first hit not at Jace but at the door. The unit door banged open. Vito Krell shoved inside, and Jace heard Mira shout from the room. Evan's cough broke into a harsh wheeze, and Lena cried out Noah's name, sharp with panic. Jace lunged, grabbed Marn by the jacket, and drove him into the wet wall, hard enough to stop him without turning it into something worse. Marn's eyes went unfocused, and Jace did not keep hitting. He did not need to, he needed space. Rusk closed in, and Jace turned, caught the grab, twisted and pulled Rusk off balance with a clean, practiced move. It would have ended it if the alley had been fair, but it was not fair. Sela Drain lifted a hand and pointed, and 2 more Bolt Pack bodies stepped out from the stairwell. Jace saw the math. Too many, too close to his door, too close to his family. He made a choice he hated, stepping back not to surrender, but to draw them away. He moved deeper into the alley, forcing Bolt Pack to follow. Come on, Jace said. If you want me, you come to me. They took the bait, and the rain muffled sound but did not hide it. Jace moved fast, striking joints and turning bodies, using the slick ground like an ally, and keeping it controlled because control was the only thing that separated defense from disaster. Then he heard a crash from inside the unit, glass, the small kind like a medicine bottle. Jace's stomach went cold because he did not need to see it to understand. Rusk saw Jace's face change and smile for the first time that night. Now you understand. You do not fight us in the street, Rusk said. We fight you in your life. Jace snapped forward and caught Rusk by the collar, drove him back hard, then let him fall into the rain. Rusk hit the ground and stared up, breath coming fast, water running off his cheek like spit. Stay away from my family, Jace said. Rusk spit water and laughed through it. You cannot guard them all day. You have to work, Rusk continued. You have to sleep. You have to blink, he finished, and the words were the real weapon. Jace did not answer. He ran to his door and shoved inside. Mira was on her knees beside Evan, and Evan's face was pale and slick with sweat. His breathing came in thin, broken pulls. And Lena stood rigid near the bed, shaking but trying not to sob. Noah hugged himself in the corner, eyes wide, and Mira looked up, her voice barely holding. They broke the bottle, Mira said. The one from the clinic. Jace saw shards on the floor, the label torn, and the loss felt bigger than glass. Fury rose, but he pushed it down because he had a job to do. Coat, he said to Lena. Now. Noah, shoes, Jace said. Mira, help him stand, Jace added. We're going to Kessel Public Clinic, he finished. Kessel Public Clinic was the neighborhood version of an emergency room, bright lights, hard benches, and a line of people who all looked like they had been losing for a long time. A tired nurse wrapped a band around Evan's wrist and marked him for triage, speaking without looking up. Breathing issues, chest pain, age risk, the nurse said. He needs a transfer to Varnholm Civic Hospital. Jace's mouth went dry. Do it. The nurse finally met his eyes. Varnholm needs an admission hold. Jace stared, and the idea did not land at first. The nurse explained it in the only way that made sense. It is like holding your seat at an airport gate, she said. It keeps the bed open, it keeps the doctor assigned, and it keeps the care moving. If you cannot place the hold, they can still see him, the nurse continued. but it'll be basic and slow. You do not have time for slow, she finished. Jace swallowed. How much? The nurse told him, and Jace felt the number like a punch, even though her tone never changed. He did not argue or beg. He just nodded and started counting what he did not have. Hours slid past midnight in the waiting area, and Mira dozed upright, then jerked awake each time a door opened. Lena and Noah sat pressed against her, silent, looking like they were trying to become smaller. Jace stared at the fee screen on the wall, feeling like it was a sentence written for him alone. He could fight a street pack, but he could not fight a bill. When the transfer finally came through, he watched Evan disappear behind a swinging door. In that moment, something inside Jace hurt in a new way, because Bolt Pack did not need to beat him in the alley. They only needed to push his family into death. A few days later, Jace walked into Ward 9 precinct because he had run out of quiet options. His only goal was simple: put Bullpack on record and get a patrol near Greybridge. Officer Sarah Vall stood behind the front desk, calm posture and steady eyes, like she belonged to Brontara in a way Jace never would. Her uniform was clean despite the weather outside, and the detail made Jace believe she took rules seriously. What happened? She asked. Jace kept it simple. Bullpack crew hit my family. They broke medicine, he added. My father is in Varnholm. They're watching our door, Jace finished. Sarah's eyes narrowed slightly. Names? Russ Dalek, Jace said. Marn Kett. Vito Krell, he continued. And a lookout named Sella Drain. Sarah typed, then looked up again. Your brother and sister walked to school? Yes, Jace said. Greybridge School Annex. Sarah tapped the screen, then paused. They move when you are at work. Jace felt his stomach twist. They will not touch them. Sarah did not promise comfort. She gave him a plan. You will not go alone if they call you. If they contact you, you notify us right away, Sarah said. Do you understand? Jace hesitated. What if they take them before I can call? Sarah's gaze stayed steady. Then we will already be watching. It sounded impossible, and it sounded like hope. Jace signed the report anyway, because paper was not protection, but it was a lever. That afternoon, the call came while Jace was at dock line, hands on a strap, when his pocket unit buzzed. A blocked line came through, and a voice he recognized, playful and cruel. Meet at dock line row, Rusk said. You come alone. You want your brother and sister walking again? You do what I say, Rusk added. Jace's breath caught. Do not touch them. Rusk laughed softly. Hurry. The line cut, and Jace forced his hand still and did what Sarah told him to do. His pocket unit displayed a line that read, Bullpack has them. Dock line row. I am moving. And then he moved with his jaw locked and his mind clear. Dock line row looked like the backside of a shipping terminal, forgotten and left to rot, with empty containers and broken lights making puddles look like oil. The air smelled like fuel, and sound traveled wrong here, so footsteps felt louder than they should. Jace's only goal was one thing, get Lena and Noah back alive, and he did not come to win a street war. He came to pull his family out of a trap. He stepped between the containers, eyes scanning, and he kept his pace steady because panic made mistakes. He saw a shadow shift behind a stack. Then he saw the small shape of Noah's shoe and the edge of Lena's hair. Both were held close by a bullpack arm, and Rusk stepped out into view, smiling like he was on stage. There he is, Rusk said, the famous Earthman. Jace did not look at Rusk first. He looked at the children. They were not crying, but they were scared, and they were holding it in. They held it the way children do when they know fear makes adults do dumb things. Jace lifted his hands slightly, palms open. Let them go and this ends, Jace said. Rusk shook his head. No, this ends when you beg, he added, watching Jace like he was measuring. Jace took one step forward anyway. I do not care about pride. I care about them, he finished. Rusk's grin faltered for half a second, then hardened again like he hated the answer. Wrong answer, Rusk said. A bullpack thug forced Noah down to one knee to try to make Jace rush. Jace moved, but he did not sprint, and he forced himself to read the angle, the distance, and the hands. He refused to give them the mistake they wanted. Then a sharp voice cut through the space, clean and loud. Ward 9, Constabulary. Step away from the kids, Officer Sarah Vall said. Officer Sarah Vall emerged from behind a container, weapon up but steady, and 2 more officers fanned out with her, moving like they had rehearsed this exact moment. Rusk froze, then tried to laugh it off. "This is a misunderstanding." Sarah did not blink. "Drop them. Now." The bowl pack holders hesitated, and Jace saw it and acted at the same time, moving toward the children, not toward Rusk. One of the officers grabbed Noah and pulled him back behind cover, and another guided Lena away with firm hands and a gentle voice. Jace felt his chest loosen by a fraction. It was not peace, but it was air. "Rusk!" snapped, turning toward the nearest officer like he might rush. And Sarah shifted her stance as the team closed the circle. It was fast, controlled, and final. "Hand where we can see them," Sarah said. Rusk's eyes flicked to Jace with hate. "You called them." Jace's voice came out low. "You left me no choice." Bullpack tried to run anyway, but one officer cut them off and another tripped a runner into a puddle. Sarah moved on Rusk and put him down hard without drama. And when the cuffs clicked, Jace felt something unfamiliar in Kessel Ward. Not safety, not peace, but a line drawn in the dirt. Sarah walked over to Jace once the children were secure, and her face softened by a degree. "Are they hurt?" she asked. Jace looked at Lena and Noah, both shaking and both alive. "No." Sarah nodded. "Good. Then we finished this the right way," she added. Jace watched Rusk get hauled toward a transport van, and he did not feel victory, only relief that still hurt. He thought of Evan and Varnholm, and he thought of Mira counting credits at the table, because justice had shown up today. Debt would still be there tomorrow. Bullpack was in cuffs, but the bill was still on Jace Mercer's table, and he needed money before Varnholm Civic Hospital slowed his father's care. A month had passed since Dockline Row, and the nights were quieter, while the hallway at Cinderbox Tenements no longer felt like a mouth waiting to bite. Quiet did not mean safe. It just meant the danger had changed shape. Jace walked the Varnholm corridor every morning before work for one reason. He needed to see Evan Mercer with his own eyes. He needed to see him breathing steady, skin warm, still here. The hospital smelled like disinfectant and tired coffee, and the waiting chairs were always full. People did not look up, because looking up meant admitting you were stuck. A clerk called Jace to the billing window, and he stepped forward with his hands open like he was approaching an animal that might snap. The clerk slid a thin stack of paper under the glass. "Medi-debt ledger," she said. Jace frowned. "That is just a list of charges." "It is your account," the clerk replied. "It is like a running tab that never closes until you catch up." Jace scanned the line items, and he did not understand half the words. He understood the total, and he felt it in his teeth. "What happens if I cannot pay this week?" he asked. The clerk pointed to a highlighted block on the page. "Your father stays in the system." "But the speed changes," she continued. "Think of it like an airport gate. If you cannot hold your spot, you do not get kicked out," the clerk said. "You just get bumped to the back of the line." Jace swallowed. He cannot wait in the back. "Then you need to bring the balance down," she said, before the next refill window. Jace folded the papers careful and tight, because folding them wrong would not change the number, but his hand still tried. He left the window and sat in the hallway for a moment, eyes on the floor, breathing slow. Bullpack was gone. The clock was not. He stood and went to Evan's room, and Mira Mercer was there, hair pulled back and hands clasped like she was holding herself together by force. Evan looked smaller in the hospital bed because sickness did that. It made people shrink without moving. Mira tried to smile. They gave him a new dose plan. Evan's voice was thin but steady. "Do not worry, son." Jace nodded because nodding was all he could afford, and he did not say the total out loud. He kissed Myra's forehead and squeezed Evan's hand, then walked out and went back into Kestrel Spire City like a man stepping into bad weather. That night, he chased a better job like it was a lifeline, going to a warehouse hiring hall and then a transit depot. He went to a private security desk that looked at him like he was a joke, and he kept his voice polite, his posture calm, and his history clean. The answer stayed the same. "We need someone bigger," one place said, and another said, "We need someone local. We are not taking off-worlders for the front line," the second place added. By the time he returned to Cinderbox Tenements, the hallway was loud again, neighbors arguing through a wall, and a baby crying somewhere up the stairs. Lena sat at the small table with a worksheet, pencil moving fast like speed could save her, and Noah leaned over her shoulder, trying to help without getting in the way. Mira put a plate of cheap food in front of Jace. Eat. Jace ate because they were watching him, chewing and forcing his mind to stay quiet. After the children went to bed, Mira sat beside him, voice low. The school sent a notice. Jace looked up. For what? Graybridge needs a payment plan, Mira said. Not much. But they want on paper, she finished, and the paper felt like a threat. Jace pressed his fingers to his temple. They are kids. They should not pay for this, he added, and the sentence came out like a bruise. Myra's eyes filled, but she did not let tears fall. We came here, so you would not break on Earth. Now you are breaking here, she added. Jace held the Medidebt ledger in his mind like a weight, hearing the clerk's calm voice and the airport gate comparison. He hated how true it felt. A knock came at the door, not loud like bolt pack, soft and patient, like someone trying to look harmless. Jace stood and opened a crack. Juno Pask stood in the hall, clean clothes and a smile that knew how to sell comfort. I heard you were looking for work, Juno said. Jace kept his hand on the door. Who are you? Someone who knows the shortcuts, Juno replied. He glanced past Jace, just enough to see the cramped room, and his eyes went to the table like a gambler stares at a losing hand. I do not want shortcuts, Jace said. I want steady pay. Juno nodded like he respected that. Steady pay is for people with options. You do not have options, he added, and he said it like a kindness. Jace felt anger rise and pushed it down. Say what you came to say. Juno leaned in a little, careful not to cross the threshold. There is a place under Ashgate Underworks. People call it the pit, he continued. It is not legal. It is not nice, Juno said, but it pays fast. Jace did not answer, because he had seen places like that on Earth, hidden behind shut doors and fake signs. He had sworn he would never step into one again, and Juno spoke anyway, gentle as poison. You fight, you win, you walk out with enough to breathe, Juno said. I do not fight for money, Jace said. Juno's smile faded a touch. You already fought for free. At least get paid this time, he finished. Jace felt the choice settle in his chest, because it could save them and it could ruin them. He pictured the thin wall behind which his family slept. What is the catch? Jace asked. Juno shrugged. You cannot be soft. People will hate you for being small, he continued. You will have to keep showing up. Jace took a slow breath. Where? Juno smiled again, satisfied. Tomorrow night. Ashgate Underworks, he added. You will see the lights. Jace closed the door and leaned his forehead against it, and the cheap metal cooled his skin without arguing. He was not stepping into a ring. He was stepping into a trap, and he did not know how tight it would close. The next night, Ashgate Underworks looked like a dead factory that did not know it was dead. Rows of buildings with black windows staring out and ground cracked like dry mud. A few flickering lights hung low, like the city did not want to admit anyone was here. Jace followed Juno through a narrow service gate, the path smelling like oil and whetstone. Somewhere below, he heard a crowd, muffled and hungry, and Juno stopped at a metal door. You go in, Juno said. Keep your mouth shut, Juno said. Do not sign anything you cannot read. Jace nodded and pushed the door open. Heat rolled out, thick and loud, and the room was packed, people shoulder to shoulder, cheering at a circle of stained flooring under harsh lights. The pit was not a stadium. It was a pressure cooker. Jace's goal was simple. Win once, take the money, walk out, and he did not want fame. He wanted a refill window and a school notice handled. A man with a clipboard spotted him and barked, Earth guy. Jace did not like the label, but he answered anyway. Yes. The man laughed and waved him forward. You are up. Jace stepped closer to the ring, eyes turning toward him as he felt the shift in the crowd. They leaned in as if they could smell an easy meal, and someone shouted, He is tiny. Another voice laughed. He's going to fold. Jace ignored them, looking at the floor, the distance, and the exits. He tracked the rhythm of the room like it was weather, because that was how you survive places like this. Crag Morrowind stepped into the light, built like a moving wall, thick arms and thick chest. His neck sank into his shoulders like he had no need for grace, and he stared at Jace the way a heavy machine stares at a nail. Crag spoke loud enough for the crowd. "You are lost." Jace kept his voice low. "I'm here to work." Crag snorted. "Work is not what this is." The man with the clipboard raised a hand, then dropped it. Crag charged, and Jace did not meet force with force. He stepped aside just enough and let Crag's momentum slide past, touching Crag's shoulder not to hurt but to guide. Crag stumbled a half step, surprised, and the crowd reacted with a noise that was half laugh and half gasp. Crag swung wide, aiming to end it fast, and Jace stayed close where wide swings were useless. He tapped Crag's arm, then his side, then his leg, each strike small but placed like turning off switches. Crag growled and tried to grab, and Jace slipped the grip and moved behind him. He hooked a leg, pulled, and Crag went down hard, more shocked than injured, and the room went quiet for a beat. Then the noise came back twice as loud, and Crag tried to rise, angry now, not amused. Jace stayed calm and watched Crag's breathing, then watched his eyes, and he saw the pattern. Crag always loaded his right side before a rush. When Crag lunged again, Jace stepped in, blocked the angle, drove a short hit into the center of Crag's chest, then shifted and took Crag's balance. Crag dropped to a knee, breath knocked out, hands spread like he had no idea how the air left him. The clipboard man stepped in fast. "Enough!" The crowd roared, and Jace stood still, breathing steady, not celebrating and not raising his hands. He waited because waiting was safer than posing. The clipboard man shoved a small pouch into his palm. "Get out," he said. Jace turned and walked through the door he came in, and the noise chased him like heat. Outside, cold air hit his face and made him realize he had been sweating, and he opened the pouch and stared. The credits inside were real, not a fortune, but enough to move the Medi-Debt ledger in the right direction. Enough to make the gate hold for one more window. He wiped his hand on his jacket and stared at the faint smear left behind. It was not blood, just grime from the ring, and it still smelled like iron. 2 nights later, Juno Pask found him again, and Jace had told himself it was a one-time thing. That story lasted until the next hospital notice came in, because the refill window did not care about vows. Juno met him near North Tram Yard, smiling like he had been waiting for applause. "You did it," Juno said. "People are talking." Jace cut him off. "I only need a little more." Juno nodded. "Then you do a little more." The pit swallowed Jace again, and the crowd recognized him now. The laughter changed from confidence to nervous interest. He fought again and won, then again and again. He kept working days at Dockline, sleeping on the tram when he could, head against the window. His dreams broke every time the doors hissed open, and Mira stopped asking him why he came home bruised. She just asked if Evan's next plan was covered. Evan's color improved, Noah's shoes got replaced, and Lena's school notice got stamped and filed. For a moment, life looked like it might loosen its grip. Then the 3rd week came, and a man watched Jace from the edge of the ring. He did not cheer or shout. He just stood there with a calm face and expensive clothes, like the whole place belonged to him, and he was being polite about it. Juno leaned in and whispered, "That is Garen Vex." Jace kept his eyes forward. "Who is he?" "The one who makes the pit possible," Juno said. "The one who decides who gets paid and who gets buried under paperwork." Jace did not like the way Juno said it, not because it was a threat, but because it was normal. After Jace won that night, 2 heavy guards stepped into his path near the exit. They did not touch him because they did not need to. One of them said, "Boss wants a word." Jace followed, because refusing in a place like this was a different kind of fight, and he followed into a back room that smelled like clean alcohol and polished metal. Garen Vex sat behind a table, relaxed. Like violence was just another product on his shelf. His eyes moved over Jace with the calm interest of a buyer checking quality. "Jace Mercer," Vex said. "Earth." Jace stayed standing. "What do you want?" Vex smiled. "I want to help you." Jace almost laughed. "People who say that usually want something." Vex held up a thin document. "This is a schedule agreement. It keeps your fights regular," Vex continued. "It keeps your pay reliable. It keeps you from getting cheated." He finished, and the promise sounded like bait. Jace looked at the header, Vex line contract, and the paper was clean while the words were dense. "I do not sign things I cannot read," Jace said. Vex nodded like he respected caution. "Good. Then listen," he added. "You fight only here. You do not take private offers," Vex said. "You do not disappear for weeks. In return, your pay increases and your matches get cleaner," he finished. Jace felt the trap under the promise. "And if I say no?" Vex's smile did not move. "Then you keep doing what you are doing. And you hope nothing goes wrong," he added, as if hope was a policy. Jace stared at him. Something already went wrong. "That is why I am here," Jace finished, and the words sounded tired. Vex leaned back slightly. "I heard about Bolt Pack. Street nonsense," he said like it was beneath him. "I also heard your father is in Varnholm," Vex added. Jace went still, because Vex found the weak spot without raising a hand. Vex tapped the paper with one finger. "You have a family," Vex said. "A mother, a father, and 2 young ones in school," he continued. "That is a lot of pressure for one man," he finished, and it sounded like sympathy. Jace felt cold clarity settle in his chest. Vex knew where to hurt him. Jace kept his voice flat. "Do not talk about my family." Vex lifted both hands, palms open, like he was innocent. "I am not threatening. I am saying I understand," Vex continued. "Understanding is useful." Jace glanced at the guards by the door, and they watched him without expression. They were not here to convince. They were here to make sure the room stayed Vex's room. Vex slid the contract closer. "Sign, and the money solves your problem faster." Jace took a slow breath, thinking of Mira at the table and Evan coughing in a hospital bed, and Lena and Noah trying to pretend this was normal. He also thought of the look in Vex's eyes, because it did not ask who Jace was. It only asked what he was worth. Jace did not sign, not yet. "I will think," Jace said. Vex nodded, still calm. "You will. Because you're responsible," Vex added. "That is what makes you valuable." Jace left the back room and stepped into the night, and the city air felt colder than it should have. The tram lights in the distance looked like a line of tiny gates closing one by one, and he walked home with a pouch of credits in his pocket and a new fear in his chest. Bolt Pack had won his pride. Garen Vex wanted his life. Morning light in Varnholm Civic Hospital made everything look too clean for the kind of fear people carried inside, and the floor shined while the walls were white. The air smelled like soap that could not cover exhaustion, and Jace walked beside Mira with a paper cup of coffee he did not drink. He kept his steps calm because his mother was watching him for cracks. Mira did not say much, but her eyes kept flicking to his knuckles, and Jace saw it and felt ashamed of how normal bruises had become. Evan slept with a thin monitor blinking beside him. His breathing was steadier now, but steady came with rules and deadlines, and Jace saw the refill schedule on the chart and felt the clock tick behind his ribs. Mira lowered her voice. "He asked about you last night." Jace leaned closer. "What did he say?" Mira tried to smile, but it came out tired. "He said you do not have to carry this alone." Jace knew that line, because people used it right before they handed you a chain and called it help. A nurse stepped into the doorway and nodded at Jace. "Billing will want to see you before the next treatment block." Jace nodded back, because he did not need the reminder. He could feel the Medidet ledger like a weight, even when it was not in his hands. When he left the room, his pocket unit buzzed, and the screen displayed a line that read, "Garen Vex wants to meet before tonight's card." Jace stared at the screen, then turned it off. He decided on a different kind of meeting. He found a public job kiosk in the hospital lobby and started searching listings, not for glory but for steady hours and basic benefits. He looked for anything that did not involve a ring, and the kiosk spat out rejection in soft words. Local preference, physical category mismatch, off-world credential gap. Jace clenched his jaw and kept scrolling anyway, until his eyes blurred and Mira touched his arm. "Jace, we will figure it out," she said. Jace answered with a truth he had been trying to avoid. "We are not figuring it out. We are surviving it," he added. He walked Mira back to Evan's room, then left the hospital. He rode the tram toward Kessel Ward and watched the city slide by like a long gray river. By late afternoon, he made his decision official, meeting Juno Pass near North Tram Yard where people moved fast and did not ask questions. Juno spotted him and lifted his hands like he was greeting a friend. "You look stressed," Juno said. That means you are thinking too much. Jace kept his voice low. Tell Vex I am done. Juno blinked once, then laughed like it was a joke. You do not say that out loud. I am saying it, Jace replied. I am done fighting. I want a real job, Jace said. I want my life back. Juno's smile slid away, and he glanced around as if walls could listen. Vex does not like surprises, Juno said. Then he can learn too, Jace replied. Juno leaned in. You do not get it. The pit is not a place, Juno said. It is a leash. He lets you earn, then he decides when you stop earning, Juno finished. Jace stepped back. Tell him anyway. Juno did not argue again. He just looked at Jace like he was watching someone walk into a storm without a coat. That night, Jace went to the pit because Vex had summoned him, and ignoring the summon felt like leaving his front door unlocked. Ashgate Underworks swallowed sound and light the way deep basements do, and the entrance door breathed heat when it opened. The crowd was loud, the lights harsh, and the floor smelled like sweat and cheap disinfectant. Brix Holloway, the match handler, waved Jace toward the back room with a sharp flick of his fingers. Boss first, Brix said. Then you fight, he added, and it was not a request. Jace followed the corridor past storage cages and silent guards, posture neutral, hands loose, eyes scanning. He had learned the exits, and he had learned he would never reach them if Vex decided he should not. Garen Vex sat in the same chair, wearing the same calm face, and he gestured at a seat that felt like a trap. You have been valuable, Vex said. Jace stayed standing. I am finished. Vex nodded slowly, like he was hearing a request to change his shift schedule. People say that when they are tired. I'm not tired, Jace replied. I am done. Vex folded his hands. Done means what? It means no more fights, Jace said. No more contracts. I will find work that does not put my family at risk, he finished. Vex smiled, soft and patient. Your family is at risk because you are poor. Not because you fight, he added, like he was doing math. Jace kept his voice controlled. You asked about them last time. Do not pretend this is concern, Jace said, and the room felt smaller. Vex spread his hands. It is not a threat. It is a fact, he continued. I can take some of that weight. Jace did not move. I did not want your help. Vex reached into a drawer and slid a paper across the table. An improved deal. Better pay, Vex said. Cleaner matches. Shorter run, he continued. You do this for a few more weeks, and you walk away with enough to close your hospital account. Jace glanced at the paper, and the words were dense and smooth like a polished knife. I'm not signing, Jace said. Vex's smile held. You do not have to sign right now. You just have to keep fighting, he added. No, Jace said. For the first time, Vex's eyes changed, not anger, calculation. The room felt colder even though the air was warm, and Vex spoke quietly. You are a responsible man, Jace. Responsible men do not gamble with their families, he finished, and it landed where it was meant to land. Jace leaned forward just enough to make it clear he heard the line. If you touch them, I will burn this place down. Vex nodded once, almost respectful. Then do not. Make me touch them. Jace turned and left, walking past the guards without rushing, forcing his breath steady until he reached the public corridor. Only then did he realize his hands were shaking. He did not fight that night. He walked out into the cold air and rode the tram home like a man trying to beat a shadow. When he reached Cinderbox Tenements, the hallway was too quiet. No arguing, no footsteps, no doors slamming. Jace's heart started to pound, and he reached for his unit key. The lock clicked open with no resistance. The door was already slightly ajar. He stepped inside and froze. The room was not destroyed. It was staged, 2 chairs tipped over, and a school notebook open on the floor. A small strip of Myra's scarf had been cut clean, like someone wanted him to notice. His pocket unit buzzed again, and the screen displayed a line that read, Come to Ashgate. Bring your hands. Do not bring police. A photo appeared beneath it. Mira and Evan sat on a bench, wrists held together with plastic ties, and Lena and Noah were in the frame, close and quiet. Jace felt the blood leave his face. This was not about fights, this was about control. He did not call Sarah, not yet, because he did not trust the message. He did not trust the building, and he did not trust himself to speak without breaking. He grabbed his jacket and the scarf strip, then left the unit without locking the door. He did not care about rent tonight. He cared about minutes. Ashgate Underworks looked different when you were not coming to entertain a crowd, and it looked like a mouth. Jace's only goal was simple: find where Vex held his family and get them out before anyone decided to make an example. He did not need revenge first. He needed rescue first. He moved along the perimeter, staying in shadow, counting patrol patterns, and the outer ring worked like a fence line around a warehouse. It delayed you and made you loud, and Jace stayed quiet. A freight door near the rear had a small keypad, and a guard stood with his back to it, bored, tapping fingers against the belt. Jace watched him for a full minute, then moved when the guard shifted weight. Jace stepped in fast and controlled, hooked the guards, arm before the man could turn, and pulled him into the wall. He covered the mouth with a gloved hand and pressed a forearm into the chest, just enough to stop breath from turning into a shout. The guard struggled, then went still as Jace spoke into his ear. "Do not make noise. I do not want to hurt you," Jace added. The guard nodded, panicked, and Jace lowered him carefully and took the ring of keys clipped to the belt. He did not knock the man out, because he did not have time for a body that would get found and raise the alarm. He slid the freight door open and stepped into the service passage, warmer and stale, pushed through vents that hummed like tired fans. The walls were lined with old conduit and patched panels, and Jace moved deeper until he reached a second door with a slot for a plastic tag. Above it, a faded sign read, "Authorized access only." The words were not a warning to him. They were a clock. He needed a way through without breaking the door, because breaking the door would bring eyes, and he scanned a room and spotted a hook with several tags hanging like worker badges. One tag, Red Underworks Access Tag, and it looked simple like a staff badge at an airport that opens the back gate. Jace took one tag and slid it into the slot. The door clicked and opened. He let out one tight breath and stepped through. He was inside the second layer. The passage beyond the access door led to a wide corridor with stripped lights and painted arrows that pointed nowhere useful. The air smelled like damp metal, and the real spine of the place was here, not the ring, not the crowd. Jace kept moving, low and fast. He listened for footsteps and felt the vibration of distant music under his boots. Then the corridor shifted. Lights dimmed, then brightened, then dimmed again, not enough to blind you, enough to make you hesitate. The painted arrows changed directions, and the hallway forked into two, then three, like a parking garage with broken signs while someone watched cameras and waited for you to panic. Jace did not panic. He stopped at the first fork and listened, catching a faint scrape to the left and a low breath to the right. He did not choose either path. He stepped back, looked up, and found the vent panel that had been opened and closed too many times. The screws were worn and the metal scratched. Someone used the vents to move quietly. Jace climbed onto a pipe brace, popped the vent panel free, and pulled himself up. Dust hit his face, and he held back a cough, and inside the vent the air was hot and thin. It carried a sound that made his throat tighten. A voice, very soft, barely more than a whisper, came through the metal like a memory. "Jace," Miro whispered. Jace froze, and his chest hurt with it. He did not answer out loud. He pressed his forehead against the vent wall and listened. "Stay steady," Miro whispered. "Do not rush. Do not break yourself," she added, as if she could see his hand shaking. Jace swallowed and moved forward, crawling on elbows and knees, muscles burning while he ignored it. Pain was not the point. Rescue was the point. He reached a vent grate and looked down into a small room lit by a single lamp. A guard sat at a desk with a cheap drink, a second guard leaned against the wall, and on the desk a tablet showed camera feeds. Jace could see his own corridor on one screen, empty, waiting for him to choose wrong. The guards were not looking for a fight. They were looking for a mistake. Jace's goal sharpened, get past without killing anyone, because if he killed, Vex could sell him to the police as a monster. He waited until the desk guard lifted the drink, then dropped. Jace hit the floor without a crash, knees bent, one hand steadying on the concrete, and he moved in a straight line to the desk guard. He wrapped an arm around the neck from behind, pulling back just enough to cut the shout, and the second guard pushed off the wall. Jace kicked the chair into the man's legs and stepped inside the reach, caught the wrist, twisted, and pinned the arm to the wall. "Stop," Jace said. "I do not want to break you." The guard tried to swing with the free hand, and Jace blocked and shoved the man down. No head strike and no blood. Just control. The desk guard sagged in Jace's hold, and Jace eased him to the floor and checked the breathing. The man was alive, dazed, not damaged. Jace grabbed the tablet and scanned the feeds, and one feed had a label that read holding stack. He saw a hallway door number and a short path, memorized it, then smashed the tablet screen with his fist to cut the eyes. He moved back into the corridor, tag still in his pocket, and ran. The music got louder and the air got colder. The lights stopped flickering. He was close. The door to the holding stack was at the end of a straight hallway, thick and plain, with two guards in front of it and a third moving behind them like a manager checking work. Jay slowed because he did not have room for a long fight. He stepped out of the shadow. The nearest guard saw him and lifted a hand. "You are not supposed to be here," the guard said. Jace moved first, closing distance in a burst and driving a short hit into the guard's shoulder to turn the body. He hooked a leg and dropped the man to the floor, and the second guard reached for a pocket unit. Jace kicked it out of the hand and pushed the guard into the wall. The third guard backed up, eyes wide, and tried to run, and Jace caught him by the collar and slammed him into the door hard enough to steal the will. "Open it," Jace said. The guard shook his head, fear sweating out. "I cannot. Boss will kill me," he added, and the words spilled. Jace's voice stayed low. "If you do not open it, I will." The guard fumbled for the keypad, hands shaking. Then a new voice cut through the hallway, sharp and official. "Drop him." Hands visible. Jace turned his head and saw Officer Saraval at the far end of the corridor, weapon steady, not wild. Two figures moved with her, fast and precise, and Jace felt the room shift. If Sarah thought he was the threat, this ended wrong. He lowered the guard slowly and lifted his hands. Sarah did not move closer yet. "Jace Mercer?" Sarah asked. Jace kept his voice calm. "They took my family." Sarah's eyes flicked to the door, then to the stunned guards on the floor, as she took in the access tag, clipped to Jace's jacket. She saw the bruises on his knuckles and made a decision in the space of one breath. "We are here for Vex," Sarah said. "We did not know he moved your family tonight." Jace spoke the truth he needed her to hear. "They are behind that door." "I can hear them," he added, and his throat tightened. Sarah nodded once. "Then our goal is the same." Jace held a new clarity in his chest. "Do not fight the police. Use them." Sarah gestured to her team, and Sergeant Holland Rook stepped forward with a small breach tool. Detective Kiva Sorn moved to secure the down guards and pull ties from a kit, and Sarah looked at Jace. "You stay with me," Sarah said. "You move when I move," she added. "Do you understand?" Jace nodded. "Yes." Sergeant Rook set the tool against the latch, and the hallway held its breath, even the distant music feeling quieter. A heavy footstep echoed behind the door, slow and confident, like someone walking to a stage. Sarah's jaw tightened. "He is here." Jace felt his pulse spike, but forced his breath steady. Sergeant Rook triggered the tool, the latch snapped, and the door swung inward. From inside, Myra's voice rose, thin but steady. "Jace!" Jace stepped forward before he could stop himself, and Sarah caught his arm for a split second, not to hold him back, but to keep him from rushing into a trap. Then she nodded, and they moved together into the room. The holding stack smelled like stale air and cheap plastic ties, and a single lamp threw hard shadows across the concrete. Mira and Evan sat on a bench, wrists bound, shoulders touching like they were trying to keep each other upright. Lena and Noah were close beside them, quiet, eyes wide, holding fear in the only way children can when they know it matters. "Jace," Mira whispered again. Jace took one step, then stopped, because rushing was how you stepped into a second set of hands. He scanned the corners, the ceiling, and the back door, looking for cameras, wire, anything that would turn rescue into a headline. Officer Sarah Vall moved beside him, weapon up, voice low and steady. "Kids first, then your parents," she said. "We keep the doorway clear." Jace nodded once. "Yes." Sergeant Holland Rook entered behind Sarah, checking angles and lines, and Detective Keevasorn stayed. Near the threshold, eyes on the hall, ready to lock the scene the moment the danger dropped. Jace moved toward the bench, and Myra's eyes filled, but she kept her face calm for the children. He knelt in front of Noah and Lena, keeping his voice soft. "You two stay behind, Sarah," Jace said. "No running." "You do what she says," he added. Noah nodded fast. Lena nodded slower, trying to be brave. "Okay," Lena said. Jace pulled a small cutter from his pocket, the kind dock workers use for straps, and kept his hand steady as he slipped it between the tie and Myra's wrist. The plastic snapped, Myra's hand fell free, and she gripped Jace's forearm like she had been drowning. Evan's breathing hitched. "So, I am here," Jace said. "We are leaving." Jace cut Evan's ties next, then turned to the children again and made sure they stayed close to Sarah. A heavy footstep echoed in the hallway outside. Not a guard step and not a runner's step. It was slow and confident, like someone arriving to collect what he owned. Sarah lifted her hand, palm down, and she did not need words. The footsteps stopped right outside the door. Then Garen Vex spoke, calm as ever, like he had walked into a meeting he scheduled. "Jace Mercer," Vex said. "You should have come alone." Jace stood and placed himself between Vex's voice and his family, not stepping into the hall and not giving Vex a clear line inside. Sarah held her position at Jace's shoulder, authority without heat. "Garen Vex, you are under arrest," Sarah said. "Step into the hall with your hands visible." Vex chuckled softly. "Officer Vol, this is not your neighborhood anymore," he added. Jace felt it. Vex was here to force a mistake. Vex continued, voice smooth. "You want them safe, Jace? You walk out and we talk like adults. You do not, and accidents happen in tight rooms," he finished. Myra's hand trembled on Jace's arm, and Evan's eyes closed for a moment like he was holding back a cough. Jace kept his voice low so the children would not hear fear in it. "You lose either way, Vex." Vex sighed, almost amused. "Doi. You are standing in my building," Vex continued. "You are holding my guards on the floor. You look like the violent one," he finished, and that was the plan. Sarah leaned closer to Jace, barely moving her lips. "He wants you to rush him. He wants you to be recorded doing it," she added. Jace nodded once. He understood. Vex did not need to win the fight. He needed to win the story. Vex spoke again, sharper now. "Last chance. Come out." Jace answered with a choice Vex did not expect, stepping backward, not forward. He looked at Sarah. "Get them out. Now." Sarah did not argue. She turned and guided Lena and Noah toward the doorway, body between them and the hall. Sergeant Rook moved to Mira and Evan, helping Evan up with careful hands. Vex's voice rose, the calm cracking. "No." Jace moved at the same time, grabbed the door edge, and swung it wider. Then he stepped into the hall alone, hands visible, shoulders relaxed, drawing eyes to him and pulling danger away from the children and his parents. Vex stood 10 feet down the hallway with 2 guards, not holding a weapon in the obvious way. He did not need one. His weapon was the situation. Jay spoke first, because talking first meant controlling the moment. "Let them pass, and you can leave breathing." Vex smiled, eyes hard. "You think you can threaten me in my own place?" Jace did not rush. He watched Vex's stance and the guard's hands, listening for the faint buzz of a pocket unit recording. One guard shifted to block the path, and Sarah's voice snapped in behind Jace. "Move! Now!" The guard hesitated, and that half-second was enough. Jace turned his body slightly as if stepping aside, then moved in fast and close where big swings and big bodies did not matter. He caught the guard's wrist, twisted, and pinned it against the wall, and the guard gasped and dropped to one knee. Jace did not strike the head and did not kick while the man was down. He used the shortest path to stop the threat and leave no room for a headline. The second guard lunged, and Jace shifted, hooked the ankle, and sent him sliding on the slick concrete. Sergeant Rook stepped into the hall and secured him with a tie in a single clean motion. Vex backed up, eyes narrowing, and for the first time he looked less like an owner and more like a man who realized the room was not obeying. "You cannot take me," Vex said, voice tight. Detective Kiva Soren appeared with a small camera unit in hand, and her tone was cold. We already did. Your guards. Your holding room. Your access tags, Soren continued. Your ledger on the back desk. It is all here, she added. Vex's smile twitched. You do not have a case. Sarah stepped forward, weapons still steady. Hands behind your back. Now. Vex glanced down the hall, as if searching for an exit that did not exist, shifting weight like he might run. Jace moved before the run. He closed distance in 2 steps, caught Vex by the shoulder and elbow, and turned him with a tight, controlled lock that did not require strength, only timing. Vex's breath jumped out of him in surprise, and Jace held the lock and spoke low. You asked about my family. You do not get to touch them again. Sarah clicked cuffs onto Vex's wrists, the metal sounding small in the hallway. It landed like a door closing. Vex's face stayed calm for a second. Then he hissed low and bitter. This city forgets heroes fast. Jace did not answer. He watched Mira and Evan shuffle toward the exit with Sergeant Rook, and he watched Lena and Noah cling to Sarah's side. He watched them move away from the holding stack and toward air that did not smell like fear. His family was walking. That was the only victory he cared about. The scene changed in a way Jace did not expect. Not with cheers, with procedure. By sunrise, the corridor outside the holding stack was taped off, and the pit's music was dead. Floodlights from official vehicles washed the concrete in clean white, and Detective Kiva Soren moved like a surgeon, photographing ties, door locks, tags, and a backroom ledger with Vex's name on it. She sealed each item in a bag and marked it with time and location. And Jace watched her hands and understood what she was building. An evidence chain, like sealing a shipping container so nobody could claim the goods were swapped. Sarah stood with her back to the wall, eyes scanning the hall even though the threat was down, and she looked tired while her voice stayed sharp. You did not kill anyone. Jace shrugged small. That was the point. Sarah nodded once. It matters. Captain Dre Marston arrived later that morning at War 9 Precinct, and Jace only saw him through a glass door at first, tall in a clean uniform. He looked like the kind of person who did not walk into Kessel Ward unless something serious happened. Sarah spoke to him in a quiet corner, and Jace could not hear the words, but he saw the gestures. Detective Soren stepped in and added something, tapping the file like it was a nail she wanted driven deep. Hours passed, and the sun moved across the precinct windows. Jace sat on a bench with Mira and Evan, both wrapped in borrowed blankets, and Lena and Noah dozed in short bursts with heads on Myra's shoulder. Jace felt the old pressure in his chest. It never left. What happens when the adrenaline fades? The question sat there heavy while the building hummed around him. The captain finally walked over, face unreadable, voice direct. Jace Mercer, you assisted in active operation. You kept your head, he continued. You protected civilians. You did not turn this into a bloodbath, Marston finished. Jace swallowed. Only one of my family's safe. That is not a small thing, Marston replied, and he held out a slim packet. We have an opening for a civilian support role. It can become a full appointment, Marston continued. Training, oversight, and a steady paycheck. It is not a favor, he said. It is a decision based on what you did. Jace stared at the packet like it might vanish. Why? Marston looked him in the eye. Because your city is full of people who know how to hurt. It is short on people who know when not to, he finished. Jace took the packet with hands that still carried bruises. Mira covered her mouth, eyes wet, and Evan closed his eyes and let out a breath that sounded like relief and grief at once. Sarah watched Jace for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was softer than usual. You do not have to do this alone anymore. Jace looked at her and felt something he had not felt on Brontara since the transport doors opened. Not safety, but a future. Weeks later, government housing did not look like luxury. It looked like space. A door that shut, a window that faced open air instead of a brick wall, and a kitchen table big enough. 4-4 plates without elbows bumping. Mira hung a clean curtain and stood back like she was not sure she was allowed to like it. Evan's care plan stabilized, and the Medidebt ledger did not vanish, but the repayment path stopped feeling like a fall. Lena and Noah walked to Greybridge with a patrol pass that made people in Kessel Ward look twice. Jay started training with the Bureau, not as a champion and not as a legend, but as a man learning rules he used to think were for other people. Sarah checked on him at the end of a late shift, and the precinct hallway smelled like coffee and paper. "You still thinking about the pit?" she asked. Jace shook his head. "I think about my family. I think about what it cost," he added. Sarah leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "And what you want now?" Jace hesitated, then answered with the truth. "I want to build something that does not get taken." Sarah's eyes stayed on his. "Then do not build it alone." Jace let the silence sit for a moment, warm and strange, and he did not reach for her like a movie would. He did not make a big speech. He just said her name, soft and steady. "Sarah," Jace said. "Yes," she replied. "Thank you," he said, "for showing up." Sarah's mouth moved, almost a smile. "I did not show up for you at first. I showed up for the kids," she added. Jace nodded. "Then I'm glad they mattered to you." Sarah looked away for a second, then back. "They do. And so do you," she finished, and the words stayed. Jace felt them settle, slow and real, because on Brontara love was not a fireworks moment. It was a choice to stand in the hallway after the danger passed and still stay. Jace made that choice. Kessel Ward did not change overnight, but the Mercer family did, and Evan's care stabilized while Lena and Noah walked back into Graybridge with their heads up. Jace finally earned a life that was not paid for with fear. Sarah never called it a miracle, because on Brontara nothing good comes easy. She called it proof that even in a hard city, the right line can be drawn and held. Jace stood at their new doorway and looked at the lights of Kestrel Spire. He knew the past would not vanish. The debt would take time, and the scars would stay. But for the first time since they landed, his family could breathe. If this story kept you locked in, please hit like. It tells YouTube to share this with more sci-fi listeners. Share it with someone who loves underdog stories. And subscribe for the next one, because Jace Mercer just stepped into a bigger world, and the next mission will cost more than money.